On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Jonas Brodin continues to be out of the lineup, but thankfully Declan Chisholm has stepped in to fill the void.
Hey, this is Micheletti, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes and live postcasts all throughout the entire rest of the season. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us. We'll talk about the David Jiricek trade and where he fits into the Minnesota Wild D-Corps. We'll talk about some players hopefully getting closer to returning from injury, as well as one big key component that has helped fill the void of Jonas Brodin being out of the lineup. And we'll also take a look at some big games coming up for the Minnesota Wild here this week. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021. And it is a Victory Micheletti Monday here today. And it's a big trade Micheletti Monday as well, I guess. So we got the double whammy here. And Alex, we had a nice win against the Nashville Predators, real tight, tense game that certainly had its share of bad blood. And so the Wild get that win, but before the game started, the David Jiricek sweepstakes led to the Minnesota Wild officially winning, and they gave up quite the haul to pick Jiricek up. So let's just give me kind of what your reaction is to the trade and what Jiricek could potentially bring to the table.
Yeah, he brings the size that they really don't have, so that's intriguing. I know there's, people are saying that there's skating issues, but that you can improve that for sure. But it just brings another element to that D-Corps. That's the strength of the team, right? And so you're really setting yourself, the Wild are really setting themselves up for a really, bright future with a lot of young, D coming with, you have Faber already here, and then Boyum going to sign after, the NCAA season is done with Denver. And then you add this guy, big check. And just a few years ago, he was the best defenseman in the World Juniors tournament. So that goes to show you that there's some there's some talent there. And they just got to untap it some more. And I think he played on just an awful Columbus team too, right? So you think you're in a better defensive structure, just better team. You likely to improve where he is right now, and he's 20 years old. So I saw some comments where people like, all right, what are we doing? Fire Bill Kieran. It's like, this guy's 20 years old, and like he said, it's an investment. He's still super young, and I think there's a lot there that they can mold into this guy, and he might have to play more than what they expected, just depending on Jonas Brodin's situation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Wild handle this. We already got a little bit of a taste with him being called up here yesterday. It sounds like the Wild coaching staff wants a chance to get him acclimated and to kind of get a sense as to where he's at in the process. A big body brings a big shot too from the top of the offensive zone, which is very appealing. He's a right-hand shot as well, which is another area of need. Mm-hmm. So you look up and down, and he's checking these boxes of things that this Minnesota Wild D-Corps is definitely going to need, because Zach Bogosian is 30, I think 33, 34.
Yeah, 34. Yeah.
And is signed through the end of next season, but there's no guarantee that he will. There's no guarantee, because he doesn't have trade protection, that he will be here for the entirety of that deal. And so if he leaves, then your only big-bodied defenseman is Jake Middleton. And with players like Brock Faber, Zeev Boyum is not the biggest of frame himself. And having bigger-bodied defensemen is something that this Wild team, you need to sprinkle a couple of those guys in. Are there questions about the skating? Absolutely. But last I checked, Andy Ness is pretty darn good at coaching up skating. So I like the Wild's identifying a player that they really wanted and going out and getting a guy who's in an organization that is, I know they're in better circumstances with Dean right now, but that is a Columbus team that's been a mess for a while. And look, if you think a prospect is a good fit for your system, I have no problem with going and getting a guy and putting him into your farm system.
Well, and Judd Brackett said they weren't going to find anybody with his type of skill set that they wanted with the pick that they the first rounder that they are giving up for this upcoming draft. So it is absolutely worth the shot to on this kid and see what they can work with. And just it's nice to see them like you said, go after somebody that they want. And they have so many assets now that they're able to to give up some, because they've drafted really well, right? And not everybody can make it. They're just not going to be enough spots. So but this was worth the chance to get a guy that was drafted in the top 10 that was available, and that doesn't happen a whole lot. So we'll see. There's a ton of upside to it for sure.
And for the concerns of, well, he's an offensive defenseman, but he can't really defend, he can't back skate. The Wild have had these types of players before, and they have a luxury with having both Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin on the roster. And when both are healthy, they're more than capable of filling in some of the slack for somebody who is, quote unquote, an offensive defenseman and is maybe not great at covering the play. The Jonas Brodin for like 7 years was paired with Matt Dumba, and that was no problem. And I would say, up until the last season plus, Matt Dumba was never adept defensively. So Brodin is certainly capable of covering for somebody. The thing that I look at is, think about this from a young player's perspective, because I saw some comments and some responses to the Athletic articles that were written that Jiricek is a malcontent. He is not willing to put in the work, on and on and on and on. Think about it for a 20-year-old player. You're in an organization and you just don't feel like you have a clear path to get to the NHL level. The team is asking you to do a bunch of different things, and you feel like you're further ahead in the process than they think you actually are. And so you go from that to all of a sudden Bill Guerin, who says, we want you, we view you as a big piece of our organization going forward. We want to add you to what we're trying to do. I feel like that's going to give him kind of a new lease on life. And it's going to lead to Jiricek coming in and being willing to put in the work, because he's in a little bit more of a stable organization and is going to get some clear direction going forward. Because those Iowa D prospects, I think Zeev Boyum and now David Jiricek, I think, have leapfrogged those guys. And their track to the NHL is much more clear than the likes of Carson Lambos and Kyle Masters. And I think that's part of the reason that Bill Guerin made this move as well, is you now have a couple of defensemen that are pretty close. You've got Zeev Boyum, who you're going to likely sign at the end of the season. But Jiricek is pretty darn close. He played NHL games this season, and it could be that just putting him in the right set of circumstances can unlock the potential that a lot of people see, which is top 4, borderline top D pairing upside, which is something that just would further deepen this D core.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they kind of see what's going on with Iowa right now too, where no one's really stepping up to the plate for those D core. And good luck to Damon Hunt too. He always seemed like a great guy, but they didn't see eye to eye full time with the big club up here in St. Paul. And so yeah, he gets a chance in Columbus, where they don't really, other than Zach Werenski, there's not a whole lot out there on the back end that I would fully trust.
Yeah, it's a D-core in Columbus that is, well, it is a D-core. Of all the D-cores in the NHL, the Columbus D-core is definitely one. That's about the nicest thing that I can say about it. But yeah, best of luck to Damon Hunt. Thought he looked good in the NHL action he's had over the last couple of seasons. Hasn't been a ton, but I think the other important thing to note, as we'll talk about here in the next segment, is if it ain't broke, the Wild have really no need to fix it. And the Wild D-core, for as much gripes as there have been about John Merrill and some of the gripes about Zach Bogosian, that unit is the best in the NHL right now. And until there is a major fallout from that, you're just not going to see anybody in that group get replaced. They've earned the right to be out there with their play so far this season. And so that pretty much eliminated a spot for Damon Hunt, because when Jonas Brodin's out of the lineup, John Merrill has slotted in and he has been serviceable. And until that changes, that's going to be your D-rotation for this Wild team going forward.
Yeah, and this has been pointed out to me a lot too. People are like, are they really going to move Declan Chisholm? Because Declan's been playing pretty well. I mean, he had a really nice goal against Nashville. So I think he's he feels the pressure, and these guys are getting scouted every single game too, and so they're getting game tape out there when they're in the lineup, and their pro scouts are watching, because Declan doesn't have any trade protection and is on a 1-year deal, and so he could easily be moved to another team that's in the playoffs or a fringe playoff, and the Wild can try to maybe recuperate some of the draft picks that they gave up for Jiricek. So
it leads to some options for Billy Guerin and the Minnesota Wild. We don't really know what's going on with Jonas Brodin, and so we'll talk about that. Kind of concerning, but we'll talk about, as you alluded to, Alex, a player who has stepped in and filled in nicely, especially over the last few games, Declan Chisholm. We'll talk about how his results have helped this D-core just continue to hum along as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just head to FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode of Locked On Wild also brought to you by Game Time, and we have hit the full throttle winter sports schedule, which means there are no shortage of opportunities for you to see your favorite teams in action. And Game Time is making the process of buying tickets as easy as possible with a new feature called Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. In addition to that, Game Time has other great features, like their all-in pricing, plus seat views. You can see what you'll see from your seat before you buy your ticket. And of course, their lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets that are cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. And once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to tune in for tomorrow's episode. We've got a lot in the works for this week. We'll be talking with Zach Zeman, taking a look at the December schedule. We're also looking to try to get Locked On NHL prospects on for a crossover episode to talk more about David Jiricek. We'll, of course, be checking in with Alexis Pearson this week. PWHL, Minnesota Frost had their first game of the season. Unfortunately, it ended in an overtime loss. So we'll talk about that, and we'll set the scene for the early part of the year. We'll talk about raising that banner, too. Anytime you can raise a banner, it's something you should definitely discuss. So a busy week for Locked On Wild here, and a week that I think there's definitely some uncertainty, Alex, because Jonas Brodin, I guess, got hurt in the latter stages of the game against Winnipeg, and it was just kind of an afterthought. But now we're 3 games in to Brodin having not played, and I look at Puckpedia. The expected return date for Brodin is December 3rd, which would mean that he will be probably missing 4 games with an upper body injury that is completely undisclosed. Haven't heard a word of an update. John Hines didn't have any update when asked about it. I have no idea what's going on, but this D-core, as good as it's been, Jonas Brodin is a huge part of that, and for him to miss any more than like a 3 or 4 game stretch is it's concerning. It's concerning to say the least.
Yeah, 100%, because he's been playing phenomenal when he was in the lineup. He was back to being the shutdown Swede that he is, and yeah, it's very concerning because him and look at this decor when him and Spurgeon are healthy. It's lights out for the most part, and yeah, it's just too bad that with this team with injuries, you never know. They could either have the bubonic plague or be in the lineup the next night. It's just yeah, who knows? They're so secretive, but that is the NHL, and that's just how they do things. I saw that somebody was asking Russo about Eriksson Ek too, and he was saying Ek is basically playing on one leg too, which I didn't know he was banged up too, but he's Ek being Ek, he's just fighting through it. I mean, we saw, remember in the Dallas series, he tried to skate and his leg just he couldn't do anything with it, and they never won again after he left that playoff series. So, but so he seems to be battling through it. This Wild team, they always make it harder than it needs to be. But they're getting unfortunate injuries at times, and hopefully the main thing is 97. I mean, he's leading the league in points, and keep him healthy.
This is I'm not going to usually be happy for things like this, but the fact that the Four Nations face-off is going on in February, like anybody that is even remotely injured for the Minnesota Wild, just put them in bubble wrap for a month,
right. Let
them heal up, and go get it after the Four Nations face-off is done. And this is another good example of the differences between last year and this year, because you lose Jonas Brodin, and that means last year. That means that John Merrill or potentially Alex Goligoski in the lineup. And now you have a situation where Declan Chisholm has been elevated to play with Jared Spurgeon over the last few games. And let me just read off what he's done in those games since taking over for Jared Spurgeon. The game logs look like this. So obviously Spurgeon got injured in the Winnipeg game. In the 3 games since, Chisholm has a goal. He has 8 shots on goal. He has been a net +3 in the 3 games. But the thing that I like too is you look at the minutes total. He's played 20 minutes, 9 seconds, 18 minutes, 43 seconds, and then 20 minutes, 58 seconds. And so it's not like he's just playing those sheltered third pairing minutes. He's getting some elevated ice time, and he certainly is showing that he's capable of that. And that's just a credit to, I think, the system that this team is playing defensively this year is just much more suited to have players slot in short spurts to not have that unit miss a beat. Brodin out, Chisholm in, and the defense has been as good as they have been pretty much all season. So major stick taps to Jack Capuano coming in and offering a new perspective that has led to some much better results for this team.
Yeah, and like I talked about earlier in the episode, I think he's starting to realize the pressure that's on him too, and he wants to stay in the NHL, be it with the Wild or elsewhere, because he knows what it's like to be in the minors, and so he doesn't want to be on waivers again. And he was fortunate that at the time that he was on waivers, that the Wild had been scouting him, and it's turned out to be a really really good signing by Bill Guerin in the front office. We'll see what happens with them, but it's definitely encouraging to see his play, and it's another thing. Thank you, Winnipeg, for keeping Logan Stanley over Declan Chisholm.
Yeah, fun fact on Logan Stanley. He was inserted back into the lineup after, I think, being scratched a few games, and he committed 3 penalties in the game that Winnipeg lost to the Dallas Stars. And then Scott Arniel was like, well, we got to get him into the lineup. He just has to stay out of the box. It's like, well, good luck with that.
We talked about it. I mentioned this, a couple episodes ago. Dylan Sandberg, he's a really important piece of that Winnipeg decor, and he broke his foot, and so now they're missing a big. They don't have, a big part of their decor that they have to rely on Logan Stanley or Colin Miller, just some of these guys, just fringe NHLers at this point in their career. And yeah, it's just they don't have Nate Schmidt anymore. Nate went down to Florida to try to get himself a cup too. But so they're their decor isn't really great in the bottom compared to the Wild. That's for sure.
Yeah, Wild definitely have the edge there. I know plus minus isn't a super great stat to use, but I think this just paints a picture as to the difference. John Merrill is a collective -1 this year in 17 games. Zach Bogosian's a +6, and Declan Chisholm is a +3. And third pairing last year, I think those players were all something like -20. And this year they haven't been. So again, I will say, with this team currently number 1 in the NHL in points, tied with Winnipeg for number 1 in points, until something goes massively wrong, this is going to be the group that you see. We thought maybe going into the season that there would be more opportunities for some of the young players to play, but everybody that's played on this roster has warranted the ice time that they've gotten. And until something goes wrong or there is a mass exodus of injuries, this is going to be the group that we see quite often.
Yeah, and it's really strange right now in the Central. Teams that you thought were going to be really good are not playing well, and you're starting to see just when they talk to guys in the locker room, like Nashville. I don't know what's going on there. It's really strange. They just all the bad vibes are off with that team, and they spent the most money in the off season. So it's just strange. Maybe getting rid of Ryan McDonough was the curse, but they made the goalie swap with Colorado, with Wedgwood to Colorado, and I don't think Wedgwood's going to help Colorado. And Colorado, just Georgiev is he's not turning around the corner. I don't see it happening. And Colorado's in the past just said, all right, we'll just try to outscore teams and not worry about, it worked somehow with Darcy Kemper, but it's catching up with them. And they keep trading for goalies that really aren't going to help. They had Toupal for a hot minute, and he was not the answer. And I don't think Scott Wedgwood is going to help Georgiev at all.
Think about this. Like, let me just paint. I'm using paint a picture a lot tonight. That's the buzz phrase, I guess. The Colorado Avalanche have played 25 games. The Minnesota Wild have played 24. The Wild have 10 more points, but the goal numbers are the ones that are just mind-boggling. The Avalanche have scored 4 more goals than the Wild. They've outscored them 81-77. And again, Wild have a game in hand. The Minnesota Wild have allowed 58 goals in 24 games. Colorado, 93 goals allowed in 25 games. So I'm no math expert, but that is 35 more goals allowed by the Avalanche. That is. Ugh.
I mean, and they played Edmonton the other night, and it was a battle of the subpar goalies, Skinner and Georgiev, and they lost 4-1. It just they couldn't get more than one by Skinner. It's been a weird Central. I mean, the hockey club Utah went into Vegas and beat them 6-0. It was. Samsonov was just giving up ugly goals left and right. It's been really weird in the Central, and Chicago can just they aren't going to figure it out.
No.
But the Wild, they just have to somehow figure out how to beat Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado, even if they are struggling, some of them.
Yeah, I take solace in the fact that you see so many teams that are just like up, down, up, down. Crazy. And the Minnesota Wild are just, no
roller coaster, which
they've been pretty even keel. Yeah. And that's another credit to John Hines. That's another credit to the mindset that he's instilled in this team.
I'm sure you talked about it, for that Nashville recap, but that overtime sequence, it was incredible because Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi, they should have won that game in overtime, but Forsberg decided to shoot the puck himself when Josi was right there for an easy tap in, and Gus makes the save, and then the Wild come down, and Kaprizov, he made the excellent choice to pass it to Jared Spurgeon, and Spurgeon was not going to miss from where he was against Saros. Saros was just in a bad position, and Spurgeon made him pay.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. That shows a big difference between the two teams, is that you've got a guy in Forsberg who is pressing because his season has not gotten off to a great start. And so he lets it rip when he should pass. And you have a guy in Kirill Kaprizov who we always say, anytime you've got the puck, shoot it. And he sees that Nashville has a little bit of an angle on him, so he defers, and the Wilds get the win. And that's there are a lot of weird teams in the Western Conference so far this season. Nashville, I think, is one of the weirdest, but Colorado it's a lot of putrid hockey. And I don't think any Avalanche fans are going to be offended by me saying that, because Georgiev came in he played for 24 minutes in one of their big losses. He gave up 5 goals.
It's crazy. He's breaking sticks over the over the goal. Yeah, just that move by Colorado for him just never made sense. He was starting to really kind of decline with the Rangers too, and they haven't really figured out that position since Kemper left, and Kemper wasn't great to begin with. So it's interesting for sure.
It's a mess.
And Gabe Landeskog, we still it's the unknown. He should really just hang it up at this point.
Just doesn't seem like he's ever going to come back. Right. But another week with some definitely winnable games. And so we'll finish by taking a look at the 3 games on tap for the Minnesota Wild. Give you a hint, more road games. We'll talk about that as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prize Picks puts their money first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. And once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. A Victory Micheletti Monday with Alex Micheletti here today. And Alex, just to finish things off for today's episode, 3 games on tap this week. The Wild will host Vancouver tomorrow. Vancouver is, I believe, tied with the Minnesota Wild in terms of expected 5-on-5 goals against. So they're playing some really, really good defense at this point in the season. You look at the standings in the NHL right now, and despite not having JT Miller in the lineup right now, not having Thatcher Demko still, The Vancouver Canucks are 13-7-3. They have given up 74 goals in 23 games. But again, I'll put it in perspective. The Wild have played one more game than Vancouver, and they have given up, math. I hate math. 16 fewer goals than the Canucks. So this is going to be another tight defensive battle. Elias Pettersson is definitely the name to watch for Vancouver on the other end. But we're getting to the point now where you look at the schedule and I say the cliche like, oh, a lot of these are winnable games. Well, now that you are tied for the most points in the NHL, they should all be winnable.
Yeah, 100%. The games last year against the Canucks were so entertaining, and so even if they don't have JT Miller, it should be fun. And Brock Besser, he always enjoys playing against his hometown team in the Wild, and it's amazing. Quinn Hughes just set a franchise record for assists for that team, and he's not even that old. It's incredible watching him with the puck because he's not very big, but he just skates so smoothly, and he has elite vision. And a guy that should be talked about more is Kevin Lankinen, who's filled a mix. I mean, for Thatcher Demko being out, I mean, they got him for nothing. He was out there. Imagine Nashville would have kept him, or Colorado. I mean, Vancouver signed him for nothing, and he's been just excellent for Vancouver with Demko out. And they get it. They have guys that you wouldn't think would be producing a whole lot, but they have Connor Garland, who's been around the block for a while, and just guys that are just really stepping up without JT Miller in the lineup.
Lankinen is 10-0-0 on the road with a 1.77 goals against average and a .931 save percentage. That is hashtag getting it done for the Vancouver Canucks. And so if Lankinen is in, that's just going to mean that this is going to be a tight game between these two teams. And I would imagine we'll see something similar to what the Wild had against Nashville. Just a tight game, not a lot of room, and it's going to come down to one team or the other getting a key odd man rush or a key breakaway opportunity and just capitalizing on it. So
yeah.
That's a fun start to the week. After that, at Anaheim and at Los Angeles, back-to-back. Anaheim Ducks have scored first in 15 of their games somehow, despite being 10-10-3 and having only scored 60 goals so far this season. So we know, just like the last time the Wild played the Ducks, they're pretty stingy this year. They don't score a ton of goals, but they at least keep the games close. And with that game, I worry about the potential for a trap game. But then again, the Wild are the best road team in the league. They are the only other team in the Western Conference that has 10 road wins is Vancouver. They are 10-2 on the road. The Wild are 10-1-3. So make life difficult for the Vancouver Canucks and then go take care of business against the Anaheim Ducks and get some revenge against the Los Angeles Kings for one of the rare clunkers that the Wild have had so far this season. Granted, I think a lot of that had to do with Kirill Kaprizov leaving that game midway through and just throwing everything in complete flux. Mm-hmm. But another good opportunity to just look at this week and say, let's get at least 5 out of 6 points.
100%. And they match up really well against Anaheim. They always play against the Ducks really, really well. And so I wouldn't be worried about that one. And yeah, the Ducks have been giving up a lot of goals recently. And with the Kings, I don't really trust their goaltending. So if you can get a couple by Rittich, he tends to, when that happens, then he goes into meltdown mode. So I would expect him to probably be in the nets for the Kings.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But another exciting week coming up for the Minnesota Wild, and plenty of trade reactions still coming for the David Jiricek trade as well. So make sure to stay tuned all week as we keep you up to date on all things Minnesota Wild. And you can do so by subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast platforms, or both. Wherever you listen, we do not care. We just care that you make Locked On Wild part of your listening plans each and every day. So make sure to subscribe and make sure to join us each and every day of the week. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.